Order, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Wagner will be here later. Does anybody know about Mr. Maris? Is he coming or not?
He will not be in attendance this evening.
And Mr. Vogelmuth is not either. Is
Mr.
that-
Walton is not attending from what I understand.
Unless he joined by Zoom. He was the one that talked about Zoom, right? Thank you. Okay. I don't know what's wrong with my computer. I'm not gonna use it. Okay. I want to announce we're going to have a quick executive session regarding personnel matters immediately after the meeting. It will be short. Okay. We don't have any residents to speak tonight. Comprehensive plan. Dr. Messer.
Well, thank you so much. So last night we kicked off the official comprehensive planning process. We completed meeting 1 of 3 scheduled meetings. Some of you in the audience, some of you around the table participated, and I thank you for that. I don't have a slide presentation tonight, as obviously we're very early in. I will keep the board updated as we will actually be seeking official approval sometime in January, so we can submit our plan and be on time in March. So we certainly have a long road ahead of us, but I just wanted to provide a brief update. So last night, the 3 tasks that we primarily addressed was the educational community narrative. That's when we write some facts about our district that we feel are important, that represent some of our values and our educational position and what we would like for our kids and our community and what we're proud of. So we worked on that together. Then we spent some time looking at shared values. We added a whole bunch of shared values that we are currently compiling. So I'm looking to get that ready for meeting 2 so we can further discuss some of those shared values. And then we concluded the night with some mission and vision work. And we were out of here on time by 7 o'clock. So those of you that missed out last night, please come to the second meeting. And I did want to open it up for any board member around the table that was present if they had any comments or questions about night 1.
I would say it's always good to like be involved in a step like that because it's kind of like the guiding and what guides everything we do all day, every day. So it's important to keep that in perspective.
Thank you.
I would just like to note that Mrs. Brady, Mrs. Hall, Mrs. James, Mrs. Small, Mrs. Skya, and myself worked together and had by far the best table of the 3 of them.
We were eager wordsmithers. That's
Yeah.
In all fairness, there was only 3 tables, so it wasn't like it was a big deal. But yes, you had a very good table, Mr. Keener.
We all had a good table.
Yeah, exactly. But moving forward, I will keep the board updated probably after each major meeting. There will be subcommittee meetings as we start to work on some of those goal areas. You'll probably be getting more of those updates in the actual presentation, either at a future ed programs committee meeting or a meeting of the full board. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have secondary curriculum updates.
As hard as it is to believe, we are already planning for the 25-26 school year and beyond. So Mrs. Dicely is here to share some updates with course proposals that we have that we'll be looking at going forward. And we're pleased that Mrs. Simpson is able to join us as well. So Mrs. Dicely.
Okay, so we have several new courses and several just changes in wording and structure. So the first ones are from the math department. And these really are just name changes to unify how classes are named in other departments as well. So in the math department, we have these courses that get confusing for as far as what they're called. And so we have all these classes with this applied college prep as part of their title. And we want to eliminate that applied college prep as part of their title. Nothing else about the classes is changing except that. And the reason again aligns then with how our science classes are set up and how our social studies classes are set up, which you can actually see on the, if you notice all of those classes have 6-3 in the number, and that's part of how we tell what level the class is at the high school. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see that this shows in our other, in a math, for example, with our change, we would have foundations of geometry, geometry CP, and geometry honors, and those numbers on the side match those. And that would be very similar to how we have set up government and economics, chemistry, many of our other classes, and it would just unify it to avoid confusion across departments when kids are looking at the course guide so that they're selecting appropriately. In health and physical education, we're also looking at making some changes. They are in the curriculum cycle this year. So when they started to review everything that they do, they have looked at some shifts in physical education in the emphasis of lifelong activity as opposed to let's play kickball. So like, let's make those movements earlier. And so what we would like to do is change. Well, let me go back to currently there's a required class in 9th grade, a required class in 10th grade, and then students have choices in 11th and 12th grade. What we'd like to do is start the choices sooner. So previously, students in 10th grade all took the same class, and it was a class that emphasized physical training and lifting. And what we'd like to do is put more of that into the 9th grade class and then start the choices in 10th grade. So there's again, there's not new classes here. We're just looking at changing what year they're being offered. So instead of certain classes only being offered in 11th grade or only in 11th and 12th grade, now we would offer some of those in 10th grade.
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
I'm just looking like movement, exploration, and dance. I picked that one because that's what I would pick. Am I able to take that 10th grade, 11th grade? And no,
No,
that's
you have to pick which year you want to take that.
Does this in any way also help in scheduling?
Actually, we sat down, Mr. Ashley, the department coordinator who's coaching tonight, which is why he's not here, and Dr. Brossman and I sat down with each of these courses and mapped out which gym or facility they use, and then how this will work into the schedule best. I think it gives us a little bit more flexibility, but it doesn't free up spaces, but it's going to change how we do the scheduling.
I was thinking more in terms of working it into the kids' individual schedules as well.
It really won't impact the kids' schedule. The most difficult part when we do the health and phys ed schedule is trying to use the facilities. So we have the 2 gyms and we have the weight room and then we have the wrestling room. And so it's really a matter of how do we get the classes in the right spots in the building. It's actually pretty similar to FCS in that certain things have to be in certain rooms or it doesn't work.
So I'm assuming this doesn't require extra staff?
Absolutely, no staff, exactly, no new staff.
Extra equipment?
Exactly the same, it's just that the teachers who had previously been teaching only one class might be teaching different
Several,
classes.
and new equipment?
No,
new
because
separate-
every class that's up here, we were already offering, we're just now including 10th graders as options within those classes.
Thank you.
These are 1 semester courses.
They're half credit 1 semester courses. So in the proposal, the actual proposal that you have in your documents, not up here, it actually shows you like what it used to be and what it's going to be in the changes. Then also in health and physical education, we had been offering a sports medicine class for quite a few years, and we've been looking and doing some research on that class and would like to change that class to be an introduction to exercise science, class that would be a college and the high school class taught through or taught in conjunction with HAC. We've already had Dr. Mackey approved to be able to teach that class. We would have to use the text that's associated with that, that's class at HAC. So I would be bringing that text to you separately for approval at another meeting if we go in this direction of this class. Again, it would be replacing sports medicine, so we're not asking for more staff to be able to teach this class. It's just instead of sports medicine, we'd be giving kids a chance to take this CHS class.
So I see we have curriculum prep and text and materials, but the curriculum prep, is that not already done since it's a HAC class?
No, we have to follow their syllabus, but the actual curriculum is not written. We have to use their course, and then they provide basic structure for the CHS classes, and each class is a little bit different. Like, it has a list of topics that we have to include. It doesn't include the entire curriculum.
Okay.
When I was reading through the proposal sheet, it seemed a lot more geared to maybe like what profession you would want to go in, like physical therapy, like things of that were coming up. as I
Correct.
was reading.
There actually is a required unit in the class that is about how, what careers are related. So that is part of the course. They have to do a research project associated with careers in exercise and sports science.
Any pre-requirements for this course for a student?
No. Other than anything that HAC requires, but I didn't notice, I didn't notice that there's a math or English requirement for this one, like there are for our math courses. There's a specific requirement. They have to be accepted to HAC. Like any of our CHS classes, they have to go through that process to be accepted to HAC, but there's not a specific course they have to take prior to this one. Okay. In the social studies department, we would like to offer a new class that could fulfill the 12th grade requirement. In 12th grade, our students currently take Global America unless they're taking AP classes, which we have, and I brought my course guide here, but probably like 7 or 8 AP courses that are options for our highest level students. And then everybody else takes Global America, and we don't offer those students choices. So we wanted to offer this new class. This one would not go into effect for 2 years because we're still in the planning process of this, and we have a teacher who's been taking classes in this area to help prepare us, and we'd like him to be able to finish his program before we, or at least come close to finishing his program before we actually offer the class. But this class would be an option for the college prep level so that those students could choose between economics in American society and Global America. This class would fulfill a need that we often hear in exit surveys from our students, that they wish that they knew more about finances before they leave. And they're all required to take our 11th grade personal finance class that's part of the business department, but this would give a whole different overview. And this would be offered in our social studies department as part of that 4th credit that students are required to take for social studies. So examples of some of the units that would be in this class, and again, we haven't fleshed out the curriculum because that's what we're asking for permission to move forward with. But examples would be things like public policy, impact on money, behavioral finance, the psychology of money, money and media, history of money, utility and spending in America, consumer economics, and then specific case studies that students would do at the end of the course. So those are just examples, but oftentimes students are saying they wish they knew more about how college loans impact them. And even though they're getting it in the 11th grade as part of their PFL course, sometimes they're not even ready for it in 11th grade. So this is the next step in 12th grade that they'll hear more about financial structures and how things in society impact them personally.
I think this is a good idea. I don't remember what Global America is like, but I looked at the book. Why that book? Because the focus seemed to be more on case studies and stories as opposed to actual knowledge, mechanics of all of those things, like how to buy stocks, how to pay your bills, how to do loans, college loans are like, et cetera.
Right, and that would just be a book to supplement, and we have not finalized that that's the book that we want. That's when we priced it out to get an estimate for this class, but we would bring the book separate for approval. But there's not a textbook out there that matches the course that we're trying to create, because we're trying to create something quite unique, so we can't just find an economics book. We teach micro and macroeconomics here at the AP level, but we aren't able to find something yet that we think would suit exactly where this course would go, but that would help us with the psychology of money unit and the case studies that they'd like to do an analysis research on at the end.
Yeah, that, I found the title a little kind of interesting, the psychology of money, but so what I think I heard you say was this is going to be a supplemental book. You'll bring it back for approval, but as the curriculum is developed, you will have other materials.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Will you use any of the books that the AP economic courses use?
I don't know the answer to that right now. I think that the course has to be fleshed out a little bit more, and I would want Mr. Newman and Mr. Casey to answer those detailed questions because we have not broken down to that level. I think there will be some pieces of it that would be similar to big concepts in AP macro and microeconomics, but certainly not to that level, as this is not a college class. This is like AP macro and microeconomics are. We
And-
often, especially in the social studies department, do design all of our courses very similar to the College Board structure for the classes. So we will likely be looking at that. And Mr. Douglas, one of the teachers who's one of the two that will be developing this class, is our teacher for AP Micro and Macroeconomics.
And this is for the next school, the upcoming school year.
No, everything
Oh,
else
no,
I'm
because he's
presenting
not going
is
to be done until 26.
correct.
Okay.
This
thank
one, we need some more time to really work out to make
Mhm.
sure we have it structured the way we want. And we're waiting for Mr. Newman to finish his financial courses that he's taking.
Thank you.
I was just looking at some of this and I could be wrong. It looks like there's 3 additional new classes that aren't replacing other ones. Music 2, HS Physical Education, Economics.
Okay, no.
Okay, so when you look in I went to your course ones and it doesn't say it's replacing another class.
So this course, for students, this specific one that we're looking at right now, is they will have the choice. So it's a new class. It's not replacing something else, but for
Right.
kids, it's either Global America or this class. So we're not asking for new staff or it's just that they would have a different choice. They wouldn't be taking both Global America and this class.
But it is a separate class. So if you look at the course calendar.
Yes,
So,
yes.
so it is 2 different classes, so it is more staff. Because otherwise, all those students would be in that one period.
This would be like 200 kids that take Global America now. So instead of them all taking Global America, half of them will take Global America and half of them will take the economics class. So that would just be divided.
We'll build the schedule depending on student course recommendations.
Right.
So it's like the music too is another one, like there's 3.
Let me talk about the music classes next, but did you have a question? None of the physical education classes are new either.
It says, well, according to this sheet, HS Physical Education's new.
So we're going to be eliminating the Introduction to Strength Training course.
I think that was the exercise science one.
That's replacing our sports medicine class. So we're completely eliminating our Introduction to Strength Training class, which was our previous 10th grade requirement for all students. And that class is going to be completely eliminated. And then all we're doing is opening up existing classes to 10th grade.
Yeah, I was just trying to understand how you have this presented here. That's
Okay.
different.
So that answers your questions?
Yeah.
Okay, now the music classes next. So for the music classes, we are looking at 2 new classes, although the music production class, which is a new class and isn't replacing something else, can overlay in the schedule with our existing music production 1 class. So in other words, those 2 classes can happen in the room at the same time with the same teacher based on enrollment based on what we need. And then the second class is a modern band class, and this one does replace our intermediate guitar class. And I do have Mrs. Sempsey here, who is the music coordinator, who can tell you a little bit more about these two classes.
Hi, it's nice to see all of you tonight. Okay, so Music Production 2 is coming out of a request from a lot of students who are very interested in music production in general. Their exit survey is something where they're very likely to want to take the next level class. And so in conjunction with conversation with the high school staff, we've talked about how can we offer that. The overlay is really important when keeping that in mind. What we would need to do is go more in depth in the study of digital audio workstations, which are called DAWs, and then continue learning in MIDI sequencing and other softwares that deepen the ideas of stereo mixing techniques, using video and audio together. These would be like real world applications of learning music technology and open up a world of careers for our students. Audio and visual is one of the largest growing areas when you're talking about music specifically, and the growing technology areas. So AV is something that our students need and can be used in a variety of ways post graduation in a lot of college applications and job applications. And if you have further questions, I'm happy to discuss that. There are some requirements of some equipment upgrades. I do want to be really transparent about that. We have 22 stations right now, I think, in the current technology portion for Music Production 1. Some of that is aging materials. We do need some new software. That would be the next step. Everything they're doing right now is very intro related, and to go to like Flow Station and things like that, there would need to be an upgrade of some software. There would need to be some curriculum prep time, but we do have staff that are well-versed in music production. And so there's not a need for extra college classes or anything for our teachers. They're well-versed in that. And then the text and materials, that would just be upgrading supplemental materials that we need, and those would not be recurring costs.
That's just like teacher resources.
So we have Music Production 1 and
Currently,
now 2 to be taught at the same.
they'd be an overlay. So because
So
they
they're
can,
going to be, I guess I don't know what, I think I know what overlay is, but maybe not. So
That's okay.
they're going to be in the same classroom and the teacher's going to have, and then their works semi-independently
correct,
with whatever level they happen to be in.
correct.
And so for Music Production 1, there are no requirements.
They,
Prerequisites.
no, so anybody can take Music Production 1
Mhm.
as an elective. Music Production 2, obviously you would need to take Production 1 before going into Production 2.
And I think what we really love about those music production classes is that they don't really
They're
require
for
you, you don't have to know how
everyone.
to read music when you come into the class.
Correct.
You don't have, like, it's a really attracts a whole different niche of students into the music department, because it's not just kids who are already in band and choir and orchestra. Anyone can take the music production classes because really they're quite technology based.
Right.
And this is this grade specific or any
No, 9 through 12.
9 through 12?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so I consider it a catch-all class, right?
Mhm.
So students that are really interested in music, but the technology side, it doesn't matter whether you're in 10th, 11th, 12th grade, as long as you're interested and you took the prerequisite of Production 1, you're eligible for Production 2. And it opens up the elective options for students and gives them also more in-depth study to understand, do I want to go into music business? Do I want to go into communications arts? Do I want to apply this in, like my son is currently in interactive web and graphic design, and he's doing audiovisual technology as part of that. So there's just a lot of avenues that this goes into, and can really strengthen our students' knowledge base. Okay,
Cue.
so modern band would be a replacement course, and that'd be replacing intermediate guitar. So modern band is a movement, just so you all know. It comes out of a teacher in the UK. Her name was Lucy Green, as well as the modern band movement here in the United States. And what it does is it embraces popular music genres and styles for students to learn instruments like drum set, electric guitar, bass guitar, keyboard, and singing techniques for those areas. It is such a popular movement. There are associations like APME, the Association for Popular Music Education, which supports this learning. Associations like Music Will, which came out of Little Kids Rock. And they already have materials in place to help support this learning. Also, PMEA, the Pennsylvania Music Education Association, has a modern band portion of festivals. So District 7 has a modern band festival, which is the district we are in for orchestra, band, and choir. There's also a modern band festival for this. Our middle school has a modern band club with Miss Stewart. So students are already super interested in learning these things. And this would be another catch-all kind of elective where you don't need any prerequisites because it's based on auditory learning and musical fluency, as opposed to all the literacy and notation that band, orchestra, and choir require. You will see that it does require equipment. Those are one-time needs that would then be able to be supported by our regular budget, our existing budget. I'm the one who put that together based on what Mr. Ciarcini has asked for. Mr. Ciarcini, by the way, has taught modern band in a previous district. He has experience. We have students coming from the middle school who are interested from a club. It just expands the opportunities for our students. Music production too and modern band together, just so for thought processes, also goes into that lifelong learning category, right? These are the things that people do outside of school then, and we're providing a pathway for like lifelong learners in music and music technology.
And just help me
Yeah,
understand.
absolutely. That's what
Okay.
I'm here for.
And I appreciate that. Okay, so these kids can come in
Yeah.
with no prerequisite. You said keyboard, electric guitar,
Drum set.
drum set
and bass.
other things.
Mhm.
So they can show up and not know how to play those instruments?
Yes, and that's the point. So
Okay.
I want you to think of it as a continuum. We provide K through middle
Right.
school general music.
Right. Mhm.
That will bolster their ability to be successful as a vertical pathway there.
Okay.
Because they sing, they play instruments, and they come
Right.
to us without, like, I'm a general music teacher. They come to me without any prerequisite knowledge. And my third graders today played barred instruments with drums, with untuned instruments, and sang all
I've
at the
been to
same
those
time.
concerts.
Yeah, right? So keep
Yeah.
them. And so when they get to the high school level, they've banked all that experience and can come and learn the techniques of applying their previous knowledges. The
Mhm.
great thing is about everything I just talked about, if you play in, I'm going to call it a garage band, like
Mhm.
a band on your own, right?
Mhm.
They often don't read standard Western music notation. They learn to read tablature. They learn to read percussive notation that relates directly to the drum set. Those are the things we're going to teach. Those chord progressions by ear. Really, you only need to know 3 chords in most popular music, 1, 4, and 5, 7. We're going to apply that knowledge. The grooves of drum set, there's some basic grooves out there to rock, country, like hip hop. They're basic grooves that they were going to teach them to sit in the pocket and play those grooves. And they're going to rotate through stations and get an applied knowledge in all of the areas. And that's how a class like this works.
Okay, I'm excited about it because you're excited. Okay, and after they take this,
Mhm.
what's next?
So many things could be next. This is the starting point.
So from this,
Yeah.
I think lifelong learning is great and essential, and we need to do it in physical education, economics, all of those
Absolutely.
areas. So with this, it seems like there should be like, okay, you have to take this and then you can do this. You have to take this and then you can do this.
Okay, so are you
Or
asking?
is it just for one semester or 1 year for, dare I say, for fun and a credit?
Well, I would hope, I'm going to put this out there, this is controversial. I would hope that joy is part of all of our coursework. Joy, it should
Well,
be
we
part of our
all-
coursework.
We
Okay.
all hope our kids
But I
go to
don't,
school.
I
and
do not
are
want to say
happy.
that these would be fluffy, fun
No, of course. not.
courses, okay?
Yeah.
I think what it does is it opens up opportunity as the great equalizer for our students. It's an equity kind of standpoint. Many students.
Equalizer, I'm sorry.
So
I
a
know
lot of
what that
students
word
don't
means. What-
have the opportunity to take lessons outside of school.
Gotcha.
And
Okay.
so we're providing an avenue for them to
Actually
find a
pick up
way to
guitar, electric
fulfill.
guitar, and et
Correct.
cetera. Okay.
And then also our current piano classes, students could come in after having piano and then extend into a new realm of learning, because this would be based on pop music. Our piano classes are based on more classical things, right? They could then take what they learn in modern band and get interested in music production, because the mixing of what we're talking about is a natural course to go into next, like learning to mix the live audio sound, the technical sound. They all work together.
Great.
I just want to say thank you to everyone who's involved with this, because were these not all the terms we heard last night during our comprehensive planning? Opportunities for students, different avenues, career options, lifelong learning. I mean, all of those words were in the documents we were working with. So it makes me so happy and proud that that's what it guides it and we do it. And
In full disclosure, I saw the presentation before, but yeah.
And to add on to that, my kids did go through school here. And I had two girls who actually ended up graduating, because as some of you know, we were in and out of living here as we lived overseas. But I have always appreciated the variety, and I appreciate the variety that both of you are bringing and exploring. I sure didn't have it 50 plus years ago when I went to high school. So thank you. Appreciate it. Anybody else have comments or questions?
I guess my only question, and I'm thoroughly excited by what you've presented, so I don't want you to take my question the wrong way at all.
Absolutely.
But with the elimination of the guitar too, what are any musical pun intended repercussions of?
I don't think there's really repercussions, because beginning guitar in some ways is group-based, in some ways is very individual, and they can work at their own pace. The other thing to keep in mind is music is coming into, we're in our year 1 of curriculum cycle. So we're looking at our global view of what we
Right.
offer and what we want to continue to offer and change. The current beginning guitar class is highly based off of classical
Okay.
guitar. And what we want to do is start to modernize that. And that will be looked at when we rewrite curriculum
Okay.
as moving towards a more modern view of that. The classical guitar is not necessarily as much of a requirement in order to even get into music schools anymore.
Right.
So there's a real trend of choice.
Okay.
And so beginning guitar will be looked at and edited and revised to give some pathways and options, and modern band would be a natural way to expand ideas of applying guitar principles.
with all these classes, will this make more smaller groups, larger groups, or how will that impact the overall offerings of all of our classes?
So again, when we do our scheduling, we look at the numbers of kids who sign up for everything to determine how many sections of things we can offer. So it may mean that in order, like, if we would have enough students to fill a music production 2 class on its own, we could teach that on its own. But what that would mean is there would probably be 1 less piano class, which we have quite a few sections of piano. So it would, we always balance it out based on how many students sign up for the courses. And that's why we're saying we're not asking for more staff. We're just going to decrease a section here to increase a section here. If we don't have enough, so for instance, if we have a class of music production right now with 18 kids in it, but we have 22 stations and we happen to have 4 kids that want music production too, because that overlays, it actually fills the classes better than the existing schedule without that overlay within it.
Do you think that the same applies to the other classes as well?
Well, at this point, there's only one level of music production,
No,
but I think that.
I'm sorry, the
Or
other,
phys ed
like
class.
the
Oh, the
phys eds.
Yeah,
and the economics.
absolutely. Same thing with phys ed, like previously a class might have only been open to 11th graders, but now it's open to 10th graders and 11th graders. And if they don't get their first choice, they'll get their second choice, and then they'll get their first choice the following year. But we're able to adjust who's in those classes more by not having it just set up as, nope, everybody has to do this. And then if it doesn't divide out evenly in the numbers,
Right.
we changed it. And we looked very strategically when Mr. Ashley and Dr. Brossman and I sat down and looked at those to decide which classes to offer just to 10th graders or 10th, 11th, and 10th, 11th, and 12th. Again, thinking about facilities usage, and then also looking at the mix of students in the classes, because we didn't always want a 10th grader with the 12th grader, depending on the class and the kind of activity that they were doing in there. And some of them did lend themselves well to that. So we really looked across the board. But yes, I think that by having more kids open to those classes, it allows us to fill the classes. Of course, our PE classes are packed overall, but it does give some variety in that schedule piece.
Anyone else?
I have a question. It doesn't, first of all, thank you for the music presentation. I'm glad to hear that they're opening up for all kids, and this sort of relates to this, and I'm not going to ask Mr. Graham to bring this up, but it seems like a lot of times we're asked to approve college prep courses or honors courses. I'm looking back at the course sequencing that you did for math. I'd like to know, and you don't have to answer it today, but maybe at the next meeting, what are we doing for like I'm looking at this slide, the foundations of geometry, the foundations of government and economics, the regular geometry and the what are we doing in those levels to help those kids in those groups approves? And you don't have to answer now, but I'd like sort of more detail, because very seldom do we ever.
So one specific area that we're making changes in that actually were approved 2 years ago, and we've been making quite a few changes in math, phasing things in, is that next year for the first time, we'll be offering our math for medical careers, and then the year after that will be our math for trades. And again, those were approved like 2 years ago, but we haven't been able to do those. And those are for our students instead of taking Algebra 2. So they'll still have to take the Algebra 1 and geometry, but then not everybody, there's no math people here, not everybody needs Algebra 2. Instead, we could give some different options for them that are more practical hands-on
But I
classes.
guess I'm asking this in general, not just for math. But
Right,
for-
but that's an example of the changes that we've been making. In the English department, we revamped all the offerings in the English department so that there are different options in 11th and 12th grade at those. We haven't made big changes in social studies, but again, they still have to take the American history course, and they still have to, so those we haven't.
What about the teaching of, even if the courses are changing, what about how it's being presented?
Oh, I think there are always ways that teachers are changing the instruction in classes for the different students.
Okay, then I guess.
And within each level of American history, each of those levels has different assessments in them. We have, there's different structure that's provided in what the expectations are.
Okay, but I guess I'm still asking for maybe a little more detailed presentation at the next.
On
meeting.
specifically on instruction in those courses or
No, just
just
generally what you're doing, and again, not just what I would consider the core subjects that, math and language arts and history and
Okay.
science.
And I will also say that we don't always have, we don't have as many students at that level, so we can't offer as many classes
I
as
understand
options
that.
because then we don't fill those classes, which we can't do. So we can't, I can have 8 different college prep level classes of English for both 11th and 12th graders because that's large numbers of kids selecting those classes, but we only have, I think, 3 different choices for the lower level classes because there aren't as many kids taking that. And a lot of those students end up at CTC their senior year and don't take an English class their senior year. So, I mean, all of those pieces come into the
I
which
guess
classes we're
I
offering.
still just would like to see the whole thing.
Sure. Dr.
I just
Dantrich
wanna
will
make
put that on a
sure there-
future meeting.
We can absolutely put something together.
Thank you.
You got it?
Yeah.
Anything else? All right, thank you very much. Appreciate you coming tonight. Next is the elementary.
So as you're aware, we have been running an elementary summer school for the past 3 summers. And so I invited Dr. Kramer and Mr. Hoffman. Appreciate their leadership in putting together this summer's program. We threw them a couple curveballs this summer since facilities wise, we had several of our elementary schools that were getting new air conditioning and we had some staffing limitations. So we actually moved them to Centerville Middle School this summer. But they didn't skip a beat. They did a wonderful job putting a program together. As you know, we've used ESSER funds over the past couple of years to support this program. So I know going forward, we're talking about how we might be able to continue with this. So wanted to at least give Dr. Kramer and Mr. Hoffman the opportunity to share how this summer went and then continue that conversation.
So the first slide has just some basic information about the structure of the summer program for elementary. We've run this for students who have completed grades kindergarten through 3rd grade. We have a 3-week session in June and then a 3-week session in July. Parents can choose to send their kids to both of those sessions or one or the other. We meet 3 days a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday from 8:30 to 11:30. And the students rotate through 6 30-minute rotations. So we have a phonics session where they focus on the connection between letters and sounds, a reading station, writing, math, STEM, and then enrichment, which includes art, music, and writing, to get them engaged and learning as they go. So students are selected for the summer program based upon middle of the year testing. Basically, what we look for are students who have not yet met benchmarks on the reading assessments, but are showing consistent growth. We get teacher recommendations as well, look for reading specialists to give their input. But basically, because we know that at most we're seeing those kids for 18 sessions, we are looking for kids who are already showing some growth, even though they haven't met the benchmark yet. We know that in 18 sessions, we're not going to change the world. So we want to look at the kids who are already making some growth. And our essential goal is to just prevent summer slide. We know that when kids leave school from us at the beginning of June, they come back at the end of August. If they haven't done anything in those 8 to 10 weeks in between, they're going to lose some things. So if we can keep them where they're at, that's our goal. So this summer we had 77 kids who attended in June, 67 in July. A lot of those students were the same students for both months. And our attendance rate was 77%. That was actually the rate for both June and July. Families are often on vacation or they have summer camps that their kids are involved with. So that attendance is not as high as what it is during the school year in most of our buildings, but it is summer and we know that there's other things happening in their families' lives as well. What we do ask when parents are registering their child is that they are able to attend 6 of the 9 sessions in the month they're registering for. So for example, if you're on vacation for 2 weeks in June, we ask you not to come because essentially you'd be there for 3 days and that's not going to be enough to really make a difference. So that's kind of the information from this past summer. So we've collected a lot of data over the 3 years that we've done this. In the first year that we did this, the second year we did this, we really looked at The kids who did not come to summer school, what happened to them between the end of school and then the start of the next school year? And Dr. Kramer was going back through that information today, so he can share some of that with you.
Yes, Jason and I were taking a look at these numbers. I was wondering, what did it look like the first year we did it? And what we found is, and when I went back and looked at our progress monitoring data, students who we offered in the first year to come but did not attend, every single student had a significant slide from their end of the year to the beginning of the year score, somewhere in the range from a 30% drop to a 50% drop. And so because when we looked at this and you see that, 25% of our students had decreased, even though they were at our program, kind of, made us think a little bit about exactly what was happening. And as we kind of looked at even more data, what we found is when you start looking at our old Acadians data from the school year, the breakdown on student progress throughout the school year looked almost exactly like this, where students at the school year, throughout the school year, about 75-ish% were making either staying the same or making progress. And we were getting about 25% that were dipping from beginning to end. And I think that happens for a variety of reasons, depending on whether it be learning concerns, whether it be difficulty in terms of as instruction grows throughout the grade levels. But I felt really great about what we were seeing in this data when it compared to exactly what we were kind of seeing throughout the regular school year. And especially compared to what we were seeing with kids that did not attend. I think if we can take 75% of our kiddos and maintain or grow them over the summer, that's excellent, because when they get back, it gives us a starting point of ahead of where they would normally be.
I have a question. Hate to do this, but
Uh-huh.
looking at those results, the 32%, these are kids that attended the program that were making growth, but were still behind.
Correct.
So when you're saying this, in my mind, you're saying that basically they really haven't grown.
Correct. But what this has done though is it's kept them where they were. So in comparison, if they were, if their score was, 50, which is a random number, and then they came back at a 25 at a 50% loss,
These
coming,
kids are
they're coming at
50%.
50 where they were. And so that was, like Jason said, it's not a full day of instruction.
Right.
It's not nonstop instruction. It's not a full week. So really our goal is to just kind of maintain, and to have almost half of them grow based on what we're doing, I think is great too, when you really break down the amount of minutes that we're instructed.
And I guess the other question is, have you ever followed through the kids that have been in, like, went last summer or first summer we tried this? How have they progressed after they've gone through this program? Have they been able to get up to grade level or close to it by the time? And I guess I go back to the fact that, research has shown that if you're not reading at grade level by third grade, you have a lot of problems going on with school. And I guess
Yeah, it's not a report that we pulled in the past. We'd have to do some digging to figure out like exactly where we're at. I mean, but because what we've been focusing on is, are we just productive over the summer? And we haven't really looked at the long-term results.
And
I guess that's just up to the tour. But
Sure.
You explained the 32%. That does make sense to me, because if they're not they may not be gaining, but
Right.
again, instead of having 25% decreasing, having 55% decreasing is.
right.
Can I? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Two questions. Just one is clarification. When you say from the beginning to the end of the summer program, are you comparing their scores that they had at the end of the school year to their scores at the beginning of the
No.
school year?
No,
Yeah.
so we have reading specialists who come in on the first day of summer school and do essentially a progress monitoring assessment with the kids. And then they come back the last day of June for the kids who are only here in June.
Okay.
For the kids who are only here in July, they come the first day of July, and then they come the last
So
day
the
of
beginning
July
of
to
the
get the
reading
kids. Yeah,
Yes.
correct.
Yep.
Do
Yeah.
you know how they're doing them when they come to school in in September.
So this year, no.
Yeah, so since we started using our new Renaissance program, we haven't, in the past, we would have done Acadian screening with all of our students. This year, because of the way we did using Renaissance and reducing the amount of students that we have to do Acadians with, we don't have the results for everyone. So we would have to go back through and really test everybody that was at summer school, which is not something we currently have.
My last question, at least for now, you made a point of saying the kids who were behind but showing growth.
Mhm.
What happens to the kids that are behind but haven't been showing growth? What are we doing for them?
So the hope of this is that we're taking those kiddos who are behind and showing growth, we're maintaining that growth to hopefully exit them out of the program eventually, so that those students are getting smaller groups and more instruction from the reading specialists. Because that's ultimately our hope, is that we're maintaining the progress that the specialists are doing during the school year, so that we can help those kids get out to
Gotcha.
kind of reduce numbers during the year when we're getting more robust instruction.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just curious. Is my thing on?
We can hear you.
Let's keep on blowing into the mic. There we go. Hey, thanks, Mr. Graham. I'll stop blowing into the mic now for your sake. So curious, of the 23% of the students that didn't attend, were those the same offenders, or was that a mixed bag?
No, I would say from keeping attendance, it was a variety of, vacations and such
Okay,
all over the place.
just curious if the 25% and the 23% correlate.
No,
No.
no.
Thank you. Just curious.
How many of these kids who attend are from the full-day kindergarten program?
There's a we extended invitations to a pretty large chunk of those extended day kindergarten students because they are in school for a full day. They tend to make tons of growth throughout the year. There are neediest kindergartners to start. So by the middle of the year, they are typically not at benchmark, but are making pretty good growth towards being on benchmark. So there's typically a very large percentage of those students that are at least offered a spot at the summer program.
And so how many, just swag at a percentage?
I would
who
say
actually would
at least
accept?
80% are offered a spot in the summer program.
And how many accept?
Well, that varies
That's
year
gonna
by
vary.
year, just based
Yeah.
upon, parents' needs and other
Their
things. But
schedules and things.
I
Yeah.
would say
Okay.
last year, I think there were 10 at least of the 30 EDK students who were at summer school.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Any questions about this?
I have a question. I was gonna ask, is the data that's gathered during summer school then given to the teachers in the fall that those students go to class with? To help enhance what they're doing with those students, what helped over the summer, what didn't, the areas?
So they're getting fresh data to start the year. So we don't give them what we use because they're getting, this year, they would have gotten their STAR reports from the STAR assessment. That would have given them like real-time information based on where their kiddos are. So we haven't been passing on what we've had. I mean, we've let, people know who we offer to.
Okay,
But we're not handing out the data because they're getting fresh stuff to start the year.
okay.
I will just add to that, the new assessment tool that have moved to Renaissance will allow teachers to see some of the historical data that we haven't been able to give them in the past. So it will be one of the advantages that we'll be able to recruit going forward.
Even from summer?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, I think
When do these invitations go out? Remind me of that. If they don't go out in January, they're like in the spring.
Right, so we start compiling after mid-year benchmark because we need to, obviously, waiting for the end of the year is too late to set this up.
Sure.
So we're compiling looking at that mid-year benchmark with Renaissance this year because it's online and a little easier to give. We may be able to wait a little bit longer to see who we would offer to. But we're trying to have it set up, I would say by April. Yeah, and because we need to figure out staffing, busing, all of that kind of information.
And I would commend you on what we were just talking about with the high school. I would say this at a very young level shows kids that it's lifelong learning. Readers read over the summer, we write, we work with numbers, we move our bodies. So I know that's harder to maybe quantify with young children, but I think that's kind of, again, one of those overall themes that our district really wants to offer for kids. So I appreciate that at our youngest kids being offered that as well.
And there are sometimes some questions, well, if these students are really struggling with reading, why do you do math? Why do you do the enrichment areas? Why do you do STEM? But you can see in that picture there, the kids were figuring out how to build a bridge between those two tables, and then they were placing books on top of that to see how many they could hold. That came from a story that they had read to them, and they had a data sheet that they were recording and then writing the reflections on based upon that. So for a lot of these students, reading, writing is tough. And so to do that for 3 hours from 8:30 to 11:30, that's not fun. To do a half hour of reading and then go to STEM and do that and have actually some more reading and writing take place with them not really realizing they're doing it, that's fun. So we try to infuse the reading and writing as much as we can into everything, but it also gives them a little bit of a break as they go throughout the day also. We also use as much of the programming as we have during the school year. So they're not coming to summer school and learning a different phonics program than what they're doing during the school year. So that student on the left, the yellow and pink tiles, those are foundations tiles. They're using that in kindergarten, first and second grade. So they're familiar with all of the materials that we're using. The next slide has some quotes from parents. We didn't really solicit any parent feedback. These are just emails that Dr. Kramer I got throughout the summer. And you can see, Mrs. Eshelman, that what you just said is kind of echoed in that last quote. That we appreciate watching her love for learning grow. So
I know this summer I got an email from a parent saying, hey, we only signed up for the first session. My daughter's upset that she can't come for the next one. Can we have her come now? And so like just to have those kind of responses come from parents and the kids want to be there that badly, like you think they'd be like, I don't want to go to school over the summer. But to have the kids going home saying, hey, we want to be there, I think that speaks a lot to what we're doing here and what the teachers are doing to have them just enjoy what they're doing over the summer.
and that's the other thing. The first year we did this, we had, I think, 8 teachers sign up for the entire summer. So some ended up teaching both sessions and they were happy to do that. This past summer, we had 30 some teachers sign up to be able to do that. So it's also something that our teachers love doing as well, because it allows them to see the kids in a very different environment. A lot of the kids who are here then go back and have that same teacher next year, or they're in the same grade level as that teacher, so they already have a connection with them. It's been really beneficial, I think, for the involvement of our teachers in the summer program as well. There's a lot of benefits to that.
This just occurred to me when you mentioned the geos. We have a new curriculum, as we all know, and not all of those books are used during every quarter during the regular year. So are you using those materials for your reading and writing during the summer school that were not used during the school year?
We actually discussed that this past summer, that in the future, that module that we don't teach, for example, in kindergarten, that's the perfect reading unit for those teachers for summer school. So I guess
You don't have to buy anything new.
that's
Right. And it's great because the teachers are familiar with the resources. So they don't have to reinvent the wheel or come up with anything new. They can just kind of flow into what they've already been doing.
And the kids are familiar with the resources
Correct.
too, so you don't have to reteach those kind of.
Well,
right.
we've been talking about happy and joy, and that makes me happy to hear. You have something
Can I
else?
ask if the number of slots that we are offering is sufficient? Like, are we touching enough kids that need this? I'm sorry, did I open up?
I'd
your
like to
mind?
take 1,000 of them, but I don't think, I mean, right now, I feel like we're trying to target the students that are going to benefit the most from it. I think one of the things that is a struggle with it is that, it's a limited amount of instruction. So kiddos that are very, very far behind probably aren't going to make a ton of growth because of the limited instruction. And the kiddos that are above, if we start bringing them in, we're starting to take away from those that we have right now. So I think we kind of have a sweet spot right now. I do think, I mean, obviously we could always take more. But right now I think we're targeting the students that benefit the most from this opportunity.
Essentially, I go through the data, I compile a list of who meets the criteria, and I send that to classroom teachers and then get their input on, who would be the best candidate based upon what they see in the classroom. They often know things like, oh, this student's moving over the summer, so, we take them off the list. And then they also have a chance to request other students be added as well.
Right.
So again, then we take a look at that group of students, we add them, and then the invitations go out. So there's a first round of invitations that go out. We kind of know based upon the number of teachers we have, how many kids we can handle. And then if we don't get enough students accept, then a second round of invitations go out. So we definitely try to fill as many of the spots that we have.
Anyone else? Any other questions? Thank
So,
you
Yeah,
very
but we have
much.
one more slide here.
Oh, I thought we were done.
Because somebody's gonna ask about cost, right?
I mean,
Well,
we
maybe
can-
it's because I read it. I knew you had
We
already
can skip
planned.
this slide
can
if you'd
skip
like.
it if
We'll
you
just go
want.
to the back.
So this sort of gives you what the cost is for a year of summer school. Summer school is sort of interesting because it straddles two budget years. So this would be for two sessions. What would end up being if we would budget for it, if you're in favor of it for the 25-26 school year, it would kind of be July of 25 and June of 2026. Transportation costs are a wild card because parents are given the option of transportation or bringing their child on their own. So we really never know what that is. Based upon this past summer, it was about $25,000, a little bit under that, but that was a round number to go with. The staffing costs, again, somewhat depends upon the teachers who apply because it's based upon their hourly rate. So a teacher who's been here longer, their hourly rate is higher than a teacher who has not been here as long. Again, that's based upon estimates for this past year. Materials and supplies, as we were talking, we don't buy any new materials. Essentially, that's things like markers, crayons, dry erase markers, whiteboards, that kind of thing, that paper that we need to have that are consumable. We're not buying separate programs or anything like that. So those consumable costs are fairly negligible. So an estimated total for what it costs for those two sessions in a budget year would be about $95,000. The way our school calendar works this year, having 3 weeks in June is almost impossible because we are in the first week of June. We need some time that second week to get for custodians to help get things set up for us, for teachers to have some time to, be away. And then we'd only have 2 weeks left in June, and then June 30th, I think, is a Sunday or a Monday, and then the following week starts into July. So at least for this calendar year, doing summer school in June isn't necessarily a feasible option. So looking at something for July 25 and then into June of 26 is what we would kind of look for you to give us some feedback on as to whether that's something you would want us to include in our curriculum budget as we work on that for the upcoming school year.
Please state that question with those dates, please.
It would be July of 2025 and then
Mhm.
June of 2026 is what we would need to budget for.
Okay. So you need approval from us, but not tonight.
Correct. So just something to think about as far as this, if that's something that the board is in support of, that you want me to make sure that I'm budgeting for as we work on the budget for the upcoming school year.
So just to clarify, so I understand, so only one session would be happening this summer? Not
Based-
two?
Based
second.
upon our calendar,
Yes.
yes.
And then the next summer,
Right.
Right.
that would be,
The first, well, assuming we could fit a June and a July, it would pay for the first half and then the second half would go on the next year's budget because of the July 1
the
date.
cycle. So
Yeah.
this summer would only be the one session.
Right.
Correct.
Followings, you'd break it into
Hopefully
the
it could be
hopefully.
two again, yeah.
Okay.
For this summer, would you be still able to offer to that same number of kids and just have more staff all at once?
Yeah, staffing is kind of what it always comes down to, and that's why we get started in about April, because we put the posting out and see what we get back, and then that kind of lets us ballpark how many kids we can get.
And that, I mean, that would be a good test to see which kind of makeup may attract more students or not. Like if you're only able to offer this one session, but to more versus breaking it into two, like who can get there more, what staffing do you have, which works?
Correct.
Every year is going to be.
Right.
Yeah, it's a
Each
tough
year's a
number.
little different.
We are continuing to explore grant funding for this as well. So the state has released the adequacy grant, which summer school would qualify for. So we're looking into whether or not we can apply for those funds for July of 25. And like I said, we've paid for this with other ESSER funds over the past several years. Eventually, we'll continue to keep looking for grant funds to pay for this as long as possible. Eventually, we may have to pick up some of this in the budget as we prepare them going forward. So that's why we're looking at that dollar amount. But anyway, we can offset it with the state funds. We will.
As we remember our businesses educating kids.
Absolutely.
Yep. Okay. Is it time for the next portion?
It is.
I'm out.
Thanks.
You can stay if you want.
I can answer questions about science.
Sure,
I'll
stay.
stay.
All right.
You like science too.
I do like science. I did go with you
You've
to
been at the
IU,
trainings
so
at
you
the
know, I
IU
guess I can
training.
answer the question.
You want like random questions? Like what's what's periodic table number 113? Like,
No, I did
are-
not
are
do
we-
it. Chemistry was not my thing.
No, it's-
That's why I taught
Throw
it.
some stuff at you. Just.
All right, so Mr. Buckwalter is our elementary science coordinator. He was unable to be here tonight because of childcare, so Dr. Kramer's gonna apparently sit in for him. So we are looking at an elementary science pilot. I think I've mentioned that several times before. Mrs. Dicely and I have been up here several times talking about the new science standards, so that's really why we're looking at this. In addition to the fact that our current program is extremely dated. I went to get program for a new teacher new to a grade level, and so there was a need for an extra kit, and the kit comes with VHS tapes. So if that gives you an idea of how long ago those programs were adopted. You also cannot get replacement items for them any longer, so you know, it's time for us to have new science regardless of what the steel standards look like. But our current program is not aligned to the steels. The current program is very much based on teacher delivery of content, and then it is hands-on. So after the students are learning the content, then they have a set of 15, 12, 8 steps that they work through in an experiment, and the experiment works out perfectly and everybody gets the same result. But that's really not the way science works. So the standards have much more shifted to an engineering process where kids are experimenting with things, they are trying things out on their own. They're seeing how things work, and then the teacher content comes later on. And then they take that and then redesign the experiment, redesign the process, see what happens again. Use those results to fine tune it even further and get better results. So science is not this neat process that you follow a set of steps and it works out. It's messy. And so we want kids to learn that and have a real life example of what that looks like. So the STEELS, I know, Mr. Keener, you like acronyms, so it stands for Science, Technology, and Engineering, Environmental Literacy, and Sustainability Standards. Those go into effect. Yeah, those go into effect next school year. The PSSAs shift from grade 4 to grade 5 next school year as well. So we need to make sure that we have curriculum in place for them. So next slide, just talks a little bit about the process that we've gone through. As Dr. Kramer mentioned, we've had teams from the district attending sessions at the IU. We've looked at programs from multiple different companies. We've rated those programs based upon their alignment to STEELS. At the sessions at the IU 13, we've gotten lots of feedback from other districts, lots of feedback from their science leads there. And we've narrowed it down to 3 different programs. This school year, we had in our September 27th in-service day, 2 of those programs came and presented their programs to teachers who signed up to go to those sessions. And Mr. Buckwalter and I are currently working on an email that will go out to teachers after conferences, inviting them to participate in a pilot for those programs. So the funds for that pilot are in the 24-25 curriculum budget.
I do want to say that you have up there, but we went over, it's just 1 unit.
Correct.
So we're not looking at a pilot where when you're thinking of what we were doing for math and ELA, it is just one piece of that. Because we know the teachers have so much on their plate right now with the new ELA curriculum in the first year. adding a pilot on top is not very tenable. So just having that unit that they can try out as it fits into their schedule is beneficial.
And we didn't want them to have to start a science pilot at the beginning of the year when they were also starting a new ELA program as well. So that's kind of why the timing for that is after the holiday break. So then, once they've taught that unit, we'll be able to get some feedback from them and bring a recommendation back to you in the spring for a new science program.
Is this on the 6-year cycle?
It is, yes.
And so the curriculum 6 years ago, it was used, it was just the old curriculum. I'm thinking about the tapes you said.
Yeah, well, if you
Do we
remember
have
when
those?
Mrs. Dicely and I started, we started a new 6-year cycle. Due to
Right.
COVID and lots of other things, science had not
Mhm.
been looked at the elementary level for many, many years.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I've been here for 9 and we haven't touched it.
and the science, I mean, my daughter is 21. The same science units that she had when she was in elementary school are the same ones that are still here.
That's slightly appalling. Is that true of other subjects in the elementary?
No,
schools?
it just happens like that. It just happened to be that that's what happened with science.
And
So,
there hasn't been a large change in the science standards.
For a very long
So
time.
for a very long time. So you were able to use the same things over and over again. But now.
Outside of the VHSs.
Yes, yes.
Right.
Once
Yeah.
the,
Yeah, everything else is
once
stopped.
Mr. Graham took away all of the TVs, we couldn't play those anymore.
And I've seen those VHSs used in other activities throughout the elementary schools. So we are reducing and reusing
There we
for
go.
other things.
Yes, creative art projects.
Yes.
So
so
this year, then we'll be fully on cycle. Everything's going to be on schedule
correct.
and it's all going to be good, right?
Mhm, it will be.
Okay,
And then we
great.
have social studies the following year, and then our 4 core areas at elementary are all new and all in the cycle.
Wonderful.
So, as I said, there are 3 programs that we're going to look at. Many companies do not have programs for K through 6 because the steels are a very unique set of standards. They are working on it. And unfortunately, we need to implement next year. And so companies are saying, but we only have grades 6 through 8. I say, well, that's fine, but I need something for K to 6. So you'll see Open Sci Ed is just something that we're looking at in grade 6. These units are available free online for us to pilot. So all of the teacher editions, all of the student materials, you can download those for free and use them. We would need to purchase materials for those units. So if there are things such as, I don't know, paper towels, aluminum foil, batteries, wire, all that sort of thing, we would need to purchase that. There are several companies, I have some listed up there, that do package this curriculum and then sell it as a group along with all of those supplies. So you would buy everything all at one time. For us to do that as a pilot doesn't make a whole lot of sense for one unit. So for one unit, we can certainly get those materials and much more cost effectively pilot that one unit. This curriculum only exists for grades 6 through 8. So it is only an option for our 6th grade at the elementary level. Next program is PhD Science. This one only exists for grades K through 5. It is published by Great Minds, which is the same publisher as Wit and Wisdom. When you look at the teacher materials, they look exactly the same. They have the same headings for the different parts of a lesson. So it starts with a launch, and then you go through all those steps. You do the land at the end. So it's a very familiar setup for our teachers. There are 4 units in each grade level. We would need to do all 4 of those units in order to cover all the standards at each grade level. And as far as piloting that, we would be able to pick one of the units. They would give us all the supplies and materials that we need for that, including teacher editions, student books, for a 9-week pilot. The cost of that is $1,000 per classroom. So that includes all the training that goes with it. And we'd have those materials to use for the pilot. This only exists for grades K through 5. So this is the one we go with, and everybody loves it, that's great, but it's only for K-5. We would need something else for grade 6. The third program that we're looking at is Twig Science. This one does actually exist for grades K through 6. For the pilot, they will provide the materials for us for a 9-week pilot for free to be able to do 1 unit. But we are responsible for paying for professional development, and that's $5,000 for a 1-day training. So that training for both Twig and PhD Science, we have scheduled for January so that our teachers who volunteer to pilot can receive the training they need. Materials would be coming in between Thanksgiving and the winter holiday break. So they would have those materials to take to the training then with them. That would allow them to begin the pilots as soon as possible after that first week of January where the training takes place, and then give us some feedback on how they worked for them and how they worked for their students. So we're piloting 3 different programs, but only one of them is actually only available K through 6. All 3 are very much based on that idea that students need to be trying things out, learning from their mistakes, revising based upon the information then that they learn from that, revising based upon the content knowledge they gain from their teachers, and then going back and trying that process again. All 3 of the programs have engineering design units built into them, where students are engaged as an engineer in building and constructing knowledge and objects. They cover all of the life science, physical science, and earth and space science standards that are needed. And so it's a very complete package. So that is where kind of we're headed. We will be back with some results and updates for you in the spring, and then a recommendation with which program or programs seems to make the best sense for us at K-6 level.
Do you envision using, depending what is picked, if you were to pick the one that is based on the Wit and Wisdom's company, and then adding on the grade 6 one from the other company that is just grade 6, if that?
It may be, or it may be that Twig is a K-6 program, but the 6th grade program begins their middle school series, so it looks slightly different than K-5. So if Twig works really well for 6th grade and not for K-5, it would be okay to use just their 6th grade piece along with PhD Science and K-5 as well.
Okay, and so the teachers that are going to be piloting are doing 1 unit of only
Correct.
1, so you,
One
sort of
unit
like we did
only
with the
one
other,
program.
they're not gonna see
Correct.
all 3
Correct.
independently.
Right.
And that's all volunteer, like our previous pilot.
Yes.
I have a question on the PhD Science, $1,000 per classroom. How many classrooms are we talking about for piloting?
We will see how many teachers we get. I don't know what our volunteer situation will look like. But at most, because we'll want to have teachers in each grade level during each program. I can't imagine that we would have more than, for example, 10 teachers doing PhD Science.
Okay.
I've budgeted, like the costs for this pilot are all in the curriculum budget for this school year. So there's plenty of funding available to do all of these pilots.
I'm assuming you're gonna bring back teacher feedback and all that. Can we make sure to include, because of that split between K-5 and 6, that there's some time for collaboration between those areas and then even between maybe 6 and what's going on in 7, 8 as
Yes.
part of that?
So there definitely has to be some 6, 7, and 8 conversation, because the way the new science standards are written in grades K-5, there are individual standards for each grade level. So kindergarten must cover the things in kindergarten. Science standards used to be in a K-4 band, and it didn't really matter when you taught them, and different districts taught them at different grade levels. Now K-5 is very much prescribed. Grades 6, 7, and 8, however, are a band. And so there's been a lot of work done with Mr. Buckwalter and Mrs. Miller, our secondary science supervisor, our coordinator, to make sure that what we are doing across grades 6, 7, and 8 covers everything. So they've actually already divided up that content and have done a nice job. Seventh and eighth grade is ahead of us in the curriculum cycle, so they've already started some of the changes to the new standards. So we know for sixth grade exactly what they need to teach. The way Twig Science is set up, they have units that are sort of designated for sixth grade, but you can also purchase them separately. So for example, if what we need for sixth grade includes 3 sixth grade units and a seventh grade unit, we can purchase that.
I love that.
Yeah. But then also definitely the transition, if it is a different program from 5 to 6, we also need to look at how different those programs are. Fortunately, because they're all based on the same set of standards, they're all very similar in their structure.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I think that concludes our part of the program. Turn it over to you now.
Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. The policy, personnel, and legal portion of the meeting should be relatively brief, but I'm going to suggest that we take a brief recess until 6:35, so that everyone can get up and stretch their legs. So we'll recess until 6:35 p.m.
I have a general question. We don't need Mr. Donato for that. Where did all the art go?
That's a good question. I wondered that too, actually.
I'm trying to come up with a witty response. I have nothing. We will make sure everything is in place for the Tuesday, the real full board meeting. We'll have something in place for you.
Because it just looks so sad.
Yeah, no, I agree. I had,
Like a new,
I
like,
made the same
expression of
comments
thing,
during the
like
comp
all
planning.
what
It
you
was,
Imagine it to be.
it's a little,
They're actually all there. And we just-
yeah.
Oh, no.
Switching it up.
Okay, so-
Doug and I'll spend half a day tomorrow drawing some pictures. We'll get it taken care of.
I don't think you want that. No one wants that.
Yeah. Wanna see them?
It will just be a moment yet.
Oh, Michael.
Yeah.
Homemade. No excuse. He's gonna have to sing a song when he walks back in. That's his.
All right, everyone, we will go ahead and convene the policy, personnel and legal committee section of tonight's meeting, anticipating it being very brief. Dr. Musser, 334 sick leave.
Yes, so Mr. Keener is exactly right. This evening will be fairly quick. I do just want to draw your attention to those of you that have been keeping score at home. We are rapidly approaching the end of our 300, our employee section, which are largely related to HR regulations, work, leave, those types of things. So we only have three or four more policies there. I did want to give you a teaser for those of you that are looking to fill those cold winter nights. We will be starting to get into finances, the 600 level. It's super exciting. And I am also going to work in a AI policy conversation at some point just to get that ball started, because we're going to have to get into that work here sooner or later. We might as well jump right in. So with that said, I'm going to work my way through the policies. The first policy, as Mr. Keener suggested there, the sick leave policy. A lot of these policies are just updates, and what we used to say is classified staff in the old policy is now being adjusted to support staff. Other than that, these policies are merely up because they're up on their cycle, and we have no other suggested changes for this policy.
All right, thank you, Dr. Musser. So any 334, the only change is changing classified to support staff for reviews. Does anyone have any questions or concerns about 334? Seeing none, we will advance that directly to second reading. 335, family medical leave.
Yes, 335, family medical leave, pretty much the same story there. I'm not seeing changes on mine right now. I might not be logged in.
Dr. Musser, 335, it is changing.
Yes, it is.
Human resources,
Yep.
the human
Title
resources
change.
coordinator to human resources department.
Can I ask a question on that one just real briefly?
Yes.
Just as far as Human Resources Department, other than specifying a particular
Okay.
role person, director or coordinator, do employees have an assigned person still
So
within
there's
human
different
resources?
groups that they all
who they're
know
going
who to contact, but anytime there's someone out or we're covering or we're doing interviews, it is very much a full department that they share email addresses, sometimes phone extensions so that they can all be reached.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Oh, and Dr. Marshall, I'm sorry. I believe you said Mrs. Hall was online. Is that?
She is listening if there's any specific questions that I can't answer.
Okay, and Mrs. Hall, if you would chime in and just let us know if there's any comments or clarifications that you would wish to offer.
Thank you.
Dr. Mustard, the first line there, classified employees at the top under authority support.
Yeah, we'll get that changed to fit with the other naming structure. Thank you. Yeah, in full disclosure, we missed out another one and Mr. Donato caught that earlier. So thank you for keeping us honest there.
My,
All right. Additional questions or comments about 335?
I do, and any other that have because it seems like there's two things that are happening, the changing of the language to support staff in some of them, and the changing of from human resources director or coordinator to just the entire human resources department. This maybe is kind of going along with what Mrs. Brady said, but I just see human resources as being very important to being like human and having a person that you can contact. And I see broadening it is a good way to make sure all bases are covered, but I also want to make sure our employees also know that as a former employee, it was nice to know the person to call who could answer the questions, get it done.
Our human resources department, they do a great job. They even actually have office hours where they're actually out in the building, making some of those connections because sometimes it's so busy, it's tough even I know it's a walk right across from the high school, but sometimes it's difficult to get over. So they're even having open office hours to make sure that they can make those connections. As far as from a policy standpoint, keeping it broad allows when people change or go in different structures that we don't have to change policy, which is why it's written the way that it is.
Mrs. Hall, do you have anything you wish to add to that?
Dr. Mustard summarized that correctly. They do work as a team, so we prefer to have it as a department so people can get quick answers. That way, if someone is on vacation or out or in interviews, that you don't have to wait. So we look at it, as more holistically as the whole department can help.
All right, thank you. Further comments or questions about 335? All right, very well. Since the changes are de minimis, without objection, we will move that directly to second reading. All right, 337 vacation. I believe the only change here is changing classified staff to support staff.
That is correct.
Any questions or comments about 337? Seeing none and without objection, we will advance that directly to second reading. 339 uncompensated leave. It appears that we are changing several instances of human resources to human resources department. And we are striking section 6.
Correct. The important part to note there is depending on some leaves, we're leaving them from all other volunteer duties. There's a line farther down as well. Yeah, in the section 6 with child rearing leave used to preclude someone from doing any other duties like coaching. That is no longer the case as we are removing that from this policy.
And Dr. Musser, could you remind us, I think that we actually made that change
You did.
globally several, so that's actually not a
Yes.
change to this policy.
It's a change to the policy. The board had the ability to make an exception for a coaching situation in the past and asked me to place this on the agenda to make sure our future direction was reflected in policy.
Okay. All right, any questions or comments about 339? All right, since the change to number 6, it is a substantive change. However, it's consistent with the board's previous direction. So I leave it to my colleagues. Should we say first reading or second reading on this one?
It's a second.
Second reading? All right, without objection, we'll advance this to second reading. And 340, responsibility for student welfare. The only change is changing classified employees to support staff.
Yep.
Any questions or comments about 340? Seeing none and without objection, we'll move it directly to second reading. 342, jury duty. Again, just technical changes, classified to support staff and adding the human resources director in place of the immediate supervisor.
That's correct.
Any questions or comments about 342? All right, we'll move that one to directly to second reading. And finally, 343 paid holidays. There are no, oh, I'm sorry, we are changing classified to support staff. Any objections or comments to 343? All right, we'll take that one directly to second reading. And finally, 347, there are no changes
There are no
recommended.
changes. Correct. We're just looking for an update.
Any comments or questions about 347? All right, we will advance that one directly to second reading. And I believe that concludes the policy agenda.
Certainly does. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have anything else for the policy, personnel, and legal portion of the meeting? All right, Mr. Wagner has been timing us. Where are we at, Mr. Wagner?
8 minutes and 41.
8:41.
42.
I think you said I had
43.
15 minutes, so
I believe the number was 7, so we are a little over that, but that's okay. We'll hold it again.
very well.
Well done.
With that, is there a motion to adjourn to executive session for personnel?
So moved.
Is there a motion by Mr.
Second.
Wagner? Is there a second? Second by Mr. Garbo. All in favor? Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.